All right, let's get our other pals and buddies and friends up in here, the fine folks of Facebook, the metaverse, before it's officially time for building the Broncos. 1 check mark, 2 check marks, 3 check marks. All right, guys, welcome in. It is 6:02 Mountain Time, 5:02 where I'm at, 7:02 where you're at, Carl. I
Yes,
keep
sir.
getting Central Time at Broncos country. We're everywhere, baby. We're all about it. The sun is out, and the Broncos, man, I had a talk with George Payton today. No, I didn't. But I'm like, hey, George, why don't you save the moves for like Tuesday, so that way Carl and I can just soak up all the big breaking news. And so far, 3 Tuesdays in a row, we've had some pretty big moves made. I guess the DJ Jones one was late on Monday, so it couldn't be talked about in the Monday show. But yeah, no, welcome in, guys. It is Building the Broncos. I am Nick Kendell and joined by Carl Dumler. As always, we are live every Tuesday at 6 o'clock Mountain Time for an hour-long show, a part of Mile High Huddle. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. Carl is at Carl Dumler, MHH, and I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also, make sure you're following us at Huddle Up Pod as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you guys are on Facebook, make sure you join us at Facebook at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Please like, subscribe, and share, whether this be on Facebook or YouTube or anywhere. We got the eyeballs coming in, but not as many likes yet. So please do us a big favor. It takes 1 second. Click the like button up there, Facebook, YouTube, and like, subscribe, share, wherever you're going. And let us know where you're watching from. Let us know what's going on. Let us know what you think about the breaking news. Broncos, I would say, filling their last major hole on the roster today, signing 31-year-old slot cornerback Quan Williams. Carl, what are your thoughts off the bat?
I'm excited. I know everybody was wanting Collins for the right tackle and just thinking, hey, that is our biggest need. We got to get that right tackle. Compton is serviceable. I think he can be a decent starter. There's still connections now to Shell. That was the right tackle for Seattle. And I know people are going to say, oh, that Seattle offensive line sucked. Why would we get one of them? He was actually pretty decent. Can't stay healthy, but he was decent. The nickel position, you're right. That was probably one of the biggest question marks on this team until today. And getting a guy like Williams, who I think is actually a pretty good player, he's on the wrong side of 30. That makes you a little bit nervous. And he's not going to be a guy that is going to speed down the field with Tyreek Hill. He doesn't have the afterburners to do that. But in space, making his early cuts, being able to handle that position, he's a fine player. And, Broncos got him for pretty cheap, gives them still room that they can make other moves. And I really do feel like they've filled out this defense with competent players at every single position, possibly great players at a few of the positions. And if you can do that, you can have a great defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Some depth still needed here, but you still got the draft, post-draft free agency, camp cuts, et cetera, et cetera. So Broncos right now, that they could take the field tomorrow. Obviously, tongue-in-cheek there. They have to install a whole new offense and defense. But
Right.
personnel-wise, what they have right now, I am comfortable with. Now, there are some spots where you could do some upgrades in competition, but I feel okay. This is rounding out to be a pretty solid roster right now. Hat tip to George Payton, like you said. The last one that was a dire need was that slot cornerback because teams live in nickel. I swear to God, every time every time before the primetime games when they announce like the base defense personnel and they list like 3 defensive linemen or 3 off-ball linebackers, my eyes roll in my head. One of these days they're going to get stuck. Like they need to be listing these guys in nickel package because that's starting in today's NFL. But I digress. Luke Wright, what's up, Broncos country? Good to see you. Like Dylan said, make sure you guys hit the like on the way in. Willem Catalano in here got a new corner. Anyone know if he's any good? We'll get into that in a second. We want to say hello to some people here real quick. Jetty Splash saying, I really don't want to go through another draft in free agency, wondering why we are not picking up a right tackle and with some depth behind that position and then watch it never happen again. They picked up Tom Compton and Calvin Anderson, so there's your depth. But I agree. That is the biggest. Now that is the most immediate pressing need for this team. We'll get into that a little bit further on the show. But Tom Compton and Calvin Anderson, at least something. Paul's in the house. Hit the like button. Good to see you. Luke's in the house. Kathy, good to see you, Kathy. I think if I remember seeing correctly, you just had a little bout with some health. So hopefully you're doing pretty well. But yeah, a little bit. I think you had a quick little hospital stay. I don't know if that's something you want me to share on here, but hope you're feeling better. I was thinking about you and I wonder if we'd see you today and hoping you're feeling better. Granville coming in. Peyton got one DB today. Do you think who would be the choice because he wants it to? Who would be the second choice because he wants to? So who would be the next cornerback? Do you think that the Broncos have interest still in bringing in a Bryce Callahan back with this move? Is the door still open for Bryce Callahan?
Oh, I think very much so. Callahan has shown he can play inside and outside. I think he's better on the inside, but he was able to play outside when the Broncos needed him to. And then throw in Williams, didn't stay healthy all of last year. Callahan can't stay healthy all of the year. And you want to have depth across that board. Darby has struggled with staying healthy. Yeah. You still don't know what Ojemudia is. And so, yeah, I wouldn't mind Callahan one bit. I think he fills out that secondary very well. And I'd still love for them in the draft. Go get yourself another safety, add to that depth. You have to expect that there's going to be injuries.
Yeah.
It's just the way it's going to be. And if you don't prepare for that, if you only have your 22 starters and say we're good, well, good luck. That's just not how the NFL works, especially now that they've added an extra game on the season. So the more the merrier, I say.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a good one. Sorry, taking care of a little bit of stuff here. Somebody saying, "Hey, handsome, text me." I thought that was for you, Carl. The beard game is strong, but I want to take care of that one. Brandon Miller coming in. What's up, my boys? Broncos for life. Great pickups this offseason. Man, I love it. So, or man, love it. Well, whatever your discretion is there. Travis, just teasing you, Brandon. Travis Tarbucks. Evening, fellas. Truly sorry I missed the show this morning. Work seems to be ramping up instead of slowing down. Job security, I guess. Hey, man, that's life sometimes. So we're happy to have you here. Oh, that's the wrong one. We got Big E Bronco coming in. Good evening, everybody. How's it going? It's going pretty well. Albert Knopper's in the house. Evening, guys. Awesome to see. Mike S in the house. Clee's in the house. So, yeah, let's get right into it. Yeah, Randy Jones saying great work. Thanks, guys. So awesome. Randy Jones with the $5 of stars. Thank you so much, Randy. We appreciate you. That's awesome to see. So let's get right into it. Quan Williams. So he solidifies the position, but what is he bringing to the defense, Carl? What are his off the cuff strengths and weaknesses? Now, I know you have a lot going on, so you probably didn't watch all of his reps from the 49ers last year, but have you picked up any information as far as what you are thinking of him and his fit in this defense?
Well, one thing I like, he is a solid run defender.
Mm-hmm.
And, in this kind of defense where you need everybody to be able to do their job and you see teams trying to spread people out and be able to get their running backs on the edges, having a nickel guy that can tackle, that is a huge bonus to have. And so he brings that to this defense. He's experienced, he's seen everything, and he's held up well. And he's got playoff experience on top of that. And again, held up well for them these last 3 games that they played. And so I think he's one of those great veterans like Callahan as well. Same kind of thing with him. They're not the burner type. They're not, like I said, they're not winning over the top. They're not big. He's, I think, 5'9", 185. So, I mean, he's going to struggle against some of the bigger guys if you get matched up in that way. But for the most part, like I said, he can handle the slot. He's good at going 2 ways. And like I said, can do well staying forward. If you ask him, again, to be man-to-man the entire game, you're asking for trouble. But asking him to play that zone man look that we saw with Fangio, and I think what we're going to see with Evero, I think you're going to be fine with him right there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm really excited about him, and you hit it pretty darn well. The Broncos picked up Quan Williams, cornerback from San Francisco 49ers. He's made a living in the slot for that defense and played 2 different defenses over there the last couple seasons, and he's been a mainstay there. He has had some injuries in his career. I believe he had bone spurs in 2016 that caused him to miss some time. There was a little bit of ugliness there with the Browns in him, I think, involving the injuries that he had. Browns getting a lot of ugliness going on. But he's been healthier than the other cornerback options, Bryce Young, Chris Harris Jr., Bryce Callahan, Tavon Young, Chris Harris Jr., the other options at that slot position. So really excited to see him here. The Broncos did not get him on a steal, 2 years, $7 million for a slot cornerback. That's pretty good money for a slot, especially one that's 31 years old. But again, the biggest thing I like about him is he is a plus tackler. He's also a plus player as a blitzer. He's actually really good at coming downhill. If you have issues with teams playing the RPO game or teams running jet sweeps and you're worried about that nickel slot guy being, just kind of who was the cornerback the Broncos had a few years ago? They called him Sticky Man. I can't remember who it was. He's good cover guy, but could not tackle to save his life. Somebody in the chat can probably get it. They called him, his nickname was Sticky Man. He was good in coverage, but he just no physicality tackling. You're not going to have that with Quan Williams. He's a great tackler. So I'm really excited to see what he can do in this defense. And like I said, this really, to me, solidifies the starting 22. Starting 22. Right tackle. Maybe you bring in a Riley Reed for a Brandon Shell and further establish that position. But other than that, I don't really hate it. I think this is good.
I think that the really nice thing, you and I talked about this, free agency is about filling in those holes that make it when you get to the draft, you don't have to reach for somebody. You don't have to reach for a position. And Tony Carter, is that who you were thinking?
Tony Carter. It was,
yes.
Yep, it was Tony Carter.
Thank you,
100%.
Chad.
Yep.
I think Matthew Beatty was the one that put that name out there.
Yeah.
I think it was the Chargers game. Was he the one that made some big plays when we were down 24-7?
I think so.
Peyton Manning, 2012. And that's when the Broncos started their big streak. I think he was a big part of that. So anyway, but you're right. That's the nice thing about going into the draft now. You don't have to reach for a position. You can take off-ball linebacker, feel good about it at 64. You can take an edge player, feel good about it. You can take an interior defense lineman. You can take a safety in all those positions. So you can say, hey, let's add to the depth. Let's add for the future, all of that. But you don't have to feel like that guy has to start day one.
Yeah, absolutely. Sinji coming in here with it. And sorry to Scott, because I did not mean to click that for you. But we also had Travis Tarbucks coming in saying, saw the clip of Russell working with receivers, already outstanding to see. Yeah, we had... Oh, here's the clip. Awesome. Russell Wilson, man, he looks good in that uniform. It'd be even better with an old school D helmet, but maybe that's for next year with the new contract and new look coming in. Did you see the 3 on the field too, man? This is Russell Wilson's own field. There's a big old 3, but there's Cortland Sutton was there. Tim Patrick was there. I think Albert Okwuegbunam was there too. Don't quote me on that one. And I know that KJ Hamler was there too. He's just kind of participating, but not physically participating, catching a few balls, but not really running. So I am excited about that, and I am a little bit, I guess, where's Jerry Judy? He said that he was excited to see it. Maybe that's something to keep an eye on going forward. But either way, awesome to see Russell Wilson out there. Thank you for the stars, Travis. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Instead of where's Waldo, where's Jerry? We're going to start a Jerry watch.
Yeah.
And, I worry about him a little bit. You and I were talking about this before the show, of just his mental makeup. He's on social media a lot, gets after people. I think he does search his name quite often on social media. That's not always a good thing to see that in a player. And now missing this session, and it's early in the offseason. Mm-hmm. Don't read into it too much yet. But if we start seeing more videos of these guys working together and Jerry's not there, you got to start thinking that he's the receiver on the outside looking in. The Broncos might have this logjam of receivers, and if they're looking to add more draft capital for 2023, I know we're getting way into the future here. Yeah. But Jerry might be the guy that they're going, hey, you haven't been the team guy. Like I said, we're way too early to be making any kind of big assumptions here.
Yeah, I'm not that worried about it at all. I'm more concerned about the fit with Russell Wilson and where he wins over the middle of the field. And Russell Wilson typically hasn't utilized the middle of the field. And people say the height of the quarterback doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you are one of the most effective outside deep throwers of the football we've seen in the last 20 years, which Russell Wilson is. So it will be interesting to see how it all fits together. I'm not worried yet, but there's a lot of mouths to feed, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm really pulling for Jerry and all these guys. It'll be great to see what they can do. Robert Caslow coming in. Did the Broncos get a tackle today? Someone in the chat said yes. To my understanding is they met with Brandon Shell, and Peyton and the front office folks are now discussing Brandon Shell, but he left without a deal is what I think happened.
He did pass his physical though.
Yes.
That was big.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see. He's still relatively young. He's been a solid pass protector, run blocker there when he's been healthy. Injuries have been an issue there. I thought his pass protection was solid there last season. It was not the issue on that Seattle offensive line. So if they can bring him in for a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal and push Tom Compton down or compete with Tom Compton for that right tackle spot, or have Tom Compton competing for one of the guard spots, you need 7-8 offensive linemen in today's NFL that you feel comfortable with. So I'm excited about the potential of Brandon Shell. I do think that personally I'd be looking for Riley Reif. If he does pass a physical, maybe that's my Iowa bias showing out there, but he is a good right tackle in the outside zone scheme with healthy. But it makes sense if Brandon Shell comes in, and then you have 4 tackles that you feel comfortable with. And guess what? If you don't like one there at pick 64 or whatever, you don't have to reach.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people are really frustrated about not getting Collins, and because they feel like, oh, look at these pass rushers coming to the AFC West. Understand, Broncos probably actually have the best right tackle situation in the AFC West right now. I mean, that's not saying much.
No, that's not saying much.
but I mean, the Chiefs, Raiders, and Chargers, all of them have terrible right tackle situations right now. So all the fans of the AFC West are really struggling with this idea of who's going to be their right tackle. And Tom Compton, probably the best starter of the group so far.
If he's worse than any of them, it's not by much. Maybe you could see Trey Pipkins take a step forward with the Chargers this year. He wasn't great there, but he's probably better than, oh gosh, who's the other one they have there? Brandon Parker, really bad at the Raiders, not good. Lucas Niang, he'll be in his third year, but second year playing, so maybe he takes a step forward with the Chiefs. But you're right, it's a division of bad right tackles and a lot of good edge rushers, so at least the Broncos aren't on an island with the issues at right tackle. And I said this on, I think it was Saturday's show or maybe Monday morning show. People are worried about the pass rushers in this division. I'm worried about the pass rushers too. I'd like a really good right tackle, no doubt about it. Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Frank Clark. That's a lot of great edge rushers. You know what else has me worried? Patrick Mahomes, Derek Carr, Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, Mike Williams, Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, Devontae Adams. I mean, blah. So at right tackle, yes, I'm with you guys. More defensive backs, more pass rushers. Like if I can get better in any of those spots anyway or add depth that can make my team better there, yes. I don't care how it comes. You know, 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. Yes, give me more pass rushers, coverage guys, and offensive tackles.
Yeah, and Travis, you are right. The AFC is going to be brutal this year. Yeah. You know, you kind of were hoping Watson would go to the NFC, but he stays here. I mean, I don't think he should be in the NFL right now, or he should be suspended until everything gets figured out with all of his legal stuff beyond, I mean, even the civil stuff, but he's still a good quarterback. Yep. And he stayed in the division. Of course, then we got Matt Ryan coming to the AFC. And so you look at the top 10 quarterbacks, you could make an argument pretty quick that maybe 7 or 8 of the top 10 are in the AFC. So you're right. There's going to be some good teams in the AFC that miss the playoffs.
Yep. Oh, some really good teams that miss the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Man, I was ranking them, the AFC teams. One of my friends was asking me, and I think there's an argument that the Steelers and the Patriots are outside the top 10 this year, which is crazy, which is bonkers to say because of those coaches that they have and the defensive infrastructure and just the pedigree and years of success. But when you start listing them, it's like somebody's gonna lose. You know, not everybody can be great. I mean, the Titans had made some good moves this year. You know, they've made some bargains. Austin Hooper's there now, Robert Woods. But that's a team that feels like they're due for some regression. But they were the number 1 seed last year. Yeah. Chargers and Bengals have gotten significantly better. The Browns, I mean, put an asterisk next to them, but who knows? The Ravens had the worst injury luck of any team in football last year. They're not going to be worse than they were last year. They're not. So yeah, it's the AFC. And then, yeah, Matt Ryan over to the Colts. I mean, what a perfect fit that is for the Colts, paying a 3rd round pick and getting, what is it, 2 3s and a 2 for Carson Wentz. Congratulations, Washington football team, the commies. You played yourself. God, if I would be so mad if I was a Washington fan. Just trash ownership, bad, just all around. You know, find a different team. Come here, come to Denver, guys. It's much better. Get out of the swamp. It's great.
Right, and Matt Ryan landing with a team with a good offensive line.
Yeah,
that helps big time with him and what he can bring to the table. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy. I was going over the Chiefs schedule somebody the other day because they got that first place schedule. You know, their game against the NFC, that 17th game, Rams. Then of course they got the Titans, they got the Bills, they got the Bengals as their extra, you know, their first place schedule. So it is. They're going to have a tough time. Broncos are going to have a tough time. If any team gets to 11 wins, I feel like they're going to be a pretty impressive team in the AFC. But we got Dennis Woods coming in here with the super chat saying, can Shell and any of these other tackles flip over to the left side if Bowles goes down?
I think that Calvin Anderson's your backup left tackle. He's the one that I'm most comfortable with at that spot. I think Calvin Anderson would tell you he could play either spot, but his tape suggests that left tackle is his best position as well. He struggles a little bit at right tackle compared to his technique at the left tackle spot. So he's your answer there at left tackle, unless the Broncos draft somebody that they feel some comfort with at that spot. But I think that is the backup left tackle right now. Shell is more of a right tackle / guard mold, and Compton I think is as good at left guard and right guard as he is at right tackle. Maybe even better because he's not going to be as exposed as much to as freaky of athletes at the edge spot compared to the interior defensive line most of the time.
Shell has started at right tackle the last 5 years. So I think he might struggle a little bit to make that switch. I mean, not saying he can't do it, and I'm not saying they won't try to at least see what he can do. I think all those guys competing for the right tackle spot are also going to have to show that they can be the swing tackle. If you don't win the right tackle spot, you got to show you can play both other spots if you're going to get a roster spot. So Calvin Anderson, like I said, I think he's probably got the best chance to be that swing tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they do keep 4 tackles this year just because injuries last year showed it. And like I said, Shell can move into guard if you need him to. So he does have more versatility that way. You know, Compton might be the guy that actually has the most trouble because he is more one position oriented right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. But talking about this offensive line, thank you so much for the comment, Dennis Woods. Yeah, the Broncos could probably bring in Brandon Shell and be pretty comfortable there. Then you really add some depth to it. But this becomes a situation where there are more bodies than there are spots available, which is a good problem to have. But somebody's going to be on the outside looking in. It could even be a starter from last year. It could be somebody that a lot of people thought was an ascending player. So right now, Carl, to put your nose to the grindstone on this one. What is the starting 5 next year on the offensive line?
Okay, you got Bowles at left tackle. I think that's locked in. Left guard, I guess I'll go Reisner there. Center, I'm going to go Glasgow. Right guard, Miners. Right tackle, I'll go Shell. I think he's going to get signed, and I think he's going to be the starter. What would be your 5?
We got Tabitha coming in here first with
you.
The stars. Thank you. Shout out to the Mile High Huddle ladies. Awesome to see you, Tabitha. Hope you're doing well. And thanks for the support. That means a lot. We really appreciate it. I think I would go with the same 5, but I do think there is a possibility out there where, let's say you have the veteran quarterback now. Maybe you are okay bringing somebody who's a little bit more raw with the coverage and everything there with the center position. Maybe Quinn Miners. I know that there was some talk about him cross-training right guard, left guard, took snaps at the Senior Bowl at center. And you think your best 5 out there is actually Miners at center, getting you a little bit more pop and movement skill than Glasgow, and then Compton at right guard with Shell at right tackle. So I don't know. It's tough. I think it's a good problem to have. I wish we had a surefire right tackle right now. Like if I could just, snap my fingers and Tristan Wirfs there at right tackle, I'd be over the moon, and so would everybody else. But that's the only spot where there's still some movement that could happen. We'll see, but I feel pretty good about it. So I guess the next question is, you listed some guys on this team who are not here, or not guys who are here, but some guys who are big absences in your list. Who's on the outside looking in? Are some of these guys not going to make the team? Or do you think that you're going to keep that much depth in backups?
I think Lloyd Cushingberry is going to have a tough time making this roster. One, he is very center dependent. If he doesn't win the center position, I have a tough time seeing them keep him as a backup. Because like I said, you want guys as your backups that can play multiple positions. You can't just have one guy for one position. And so I think he could have a tough time, especially with the switch to the wide zone scheme. I don't know if he has the ability to do that. He didn't have to do much of it in college. He hasn't had to do much of it with the Broncos, and just some of his movement skills. I really question what he brings to the table. So I think really this move to Nathaniel Hackett could be detrimental to him. I still think he's an NFL player. I think he'll catch on with some other team. I'm just not sure it's with the Broncos.
Yeah, definitely. And he's still 2 years of rookie control, exceedingly cheap, 2 years of starting experience, and been a bottom 8 center mostly for the last 2 years ish. There's some value there. I think that the Broncos, if the way we're talking right now, they also brought in Ben Bradison. Don't forget about him. Who I think that's the name off the top of my head, Michigan center. I remember scouting him. And then also Natane Moody, who's another one that's interesting as far as the scheme fit. We'll see with him. But Cushingberry is one I think is definitely, you talked about it, making the roster right now, the versatility, the scheme fit. If you're going to be a backup, you need to be able to play, and you're a pure interior guy, you need to be able to play both guard spots as well. And I don't know if he projects that way. So he's somebody that I think is, maybe you could get back a 2023 6th-round pick or something, because you saw the Broncos add some guys like a Stephen Weatherly, a Kenny Young for cheap late picks this last year, just to kind of help fill in the roster some, to get you some competency at some positions where you needed competency. And that's one that makes sense with me for Cushingberry. I could see him getting somewhere for a 2023 6th-round pick, either after the draft or even before the draft.
Right. And I saw some people asking who would all play center. You already mentioned Miners has cross-trained. Glasgow has played both positions here in the NFL. I think there's a good chance they're going to bring in somebody from the draft with a late round pick that's going to be an interior guy. You got the guy that came from Green Bay that can play all the interior spots. So they've got options outside of Cushingberry.
Yep.
And like I said, go ahead.
Yeah, Zebulon saying bottom 8, there's value. There's value because he's 2 years on a rookie contract and he has starting experience. So it's not like you're not going to ask for a lot for him. Like if he was a top 8 center, you wouldn't be trading him, but you'd be getting probably a round 2 pick for him, so to speak. But somebody will probably take on him for how young he is, how cheap he is, and somebody with a power scheme looking for somebody to solidify the center position. It would make sense for them.
Exactly. All right. We got some other questions coming in here. Sorry. I did a little click in there. Chris coming in here saying, are we sure we aren't letting Peyton off the hook after the Wilson pickup? A lot of these signings aren't all that great, honestly. Here's the deal. You're not going to get all the top free agents on the market. It's just not the way it works. The 2014 offseason where the Broncos got Ware, Talib, Sanders, Ward, that's very rare that you go out there and spin like that. And it's very rare that it actually works if you go spin like that. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing. The Broncos getting those guys to become Pro Bowl players, it doesn't happen. And, I think that was one of the highest rated free agent classes of all time. I think they've never had 3 players that went to a new team and became Pro Bowlers year 1 ever. That was the first time ever. So again, it just shows a lot of times you're trying to do these bargain bin shopping when you come to the free agency. You're trying to find the second tier guys that can come in and fill out your roster. Mm-hmm. And George Payton has talked about it where he likes to build the roster from the bottom up. Last year, the Broncos were terrible on special teams. Some of these guys raise the level of what your special teams are. And then on top of that, they add some depth, add some experience. And a lot of these guys come from systems that the Broncos have used or are going to use this year. So again, that helps with the transition. If you look at these trades and where they've played, who they played under, they make a lot of sense. Now, they don't move the needle a whole lot for the Broncos, but they at least fill out the roster to make it look better going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know I guess my question to Chris is then what kind of moves are you expecting? The Randy Gregory one, considering the contract he got compared to Chandler Jones and Von Miller, I'll take Randy Gregory. I mean, easy to say in hindsight, but Von Miller got a crazy deal. Absolutely insane. So did Chandler Jones. So Gregory's 4 years younger still? I know there's questions there, but you have a lot of flexibility with this contract as well, where if he doesn't work out, you're going to be okay. It's a 2-year contract in essence. After that, DJ Jones, you really needed to solidify the interior. He's still young. I think he's only 26 years old. He's pretty versatile as well. And last year, Broncos were 30th out of 32 teams in run stuff rate in the NFL. And they were really poor in EPA per play. For run defense. So he's going to help you a lot there. You definitely didn't get a bargain in DJ Jones, but he should help you a lot. And that was really a big need after you lost Shelby Harris. So again, not a lot of these moves have been crazy moves. I don't know. Maybe missing out on La'el Collins was an issue, but I'm also considering trading for Russell Wilson to be one of these free agent moves. And I'm considering getting ahead of the curve and paying Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick prior to the offseason being part of the free agency as well. Because I mean, when guys are getting contracts like the wide receivers were in the last 2 off seasons, you got Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton on huge steals. So that's all part of the equation for me as well when I think about it.
Right. And look at the flexibility those contracts brought from Sutton and Tim Patrick, where now they've already redone them. So they could open up more space to get other players. So the Broncos, I think, have played this offseason really well. Mm-hmm. Again, once free agency hit, a lot of these moves haven't really moved the needle a ton, but they've at least helped fill out the roster so you feel better going into the draft, that you don't have any holes that you absolutely have to fill early on. And you feel good about each of these players and how they can fit within the system. All those things are big. But we got Travis Tarbucks coming in saying, what do you guys know about Josh Johnson? Watched his press conference, just haven't watched any of his film yet. Good backup, understands his role. Yeah. That's the main thing with your backup quarterback. You either want, if you are looking for a young guy that can maybe start down the road, or you want a guy that can be a true backup, understand that that's where he's going to be. And if he needs to do a spot start, he can do it, come in, not completely destroy your team. Josh Johnson does all those things for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think he'd preclude this team from adding a quarterback in the draft too. If one fell to them they liked, they brought back Brett Rippon. But if they draft a quarterback round 5 or 4 this year, thanks, Brett. I look forward to watching your coaching career because he's a smart mind. I mean, he's gonna be a good coach if he wants to be. Also, shout out to speaking of Broncos, who have gone on to new positions in football. Virgil Green. Did you see this news today with Virgil Green? Director of player personnel now at Nevada, University of Nevada. So shout out to him at going back to the Wolfpack, and shout out to Virgil Green, man. He was a fun little tight end too for the Broncos there for a number of years with the Peyton year. Good blocker. We could use a Virgil Green like guy on this team. We'll see if Tomlinson can be that. Andrew Baker coming in with the support. Thank you, Andrew, with the flex there as well. Sup, Nick, Carl, and Scott. This defense was holding this team down the last years, so hopefully a high-flying offense does our due produce more now. Interesting. I guess the question for me is, what does producing more exactly ask? Because I could see this defense this year giving up more explosive plays, more points, more yards than what we saw last year. But are they creating more turnovers? Are they creating more game-changing plays with sacks and whatnot? Because now what you need defensively changes with the type of offense you had. Last year, the Broncos were playing a type of offense where it was, as Scott likes to say, it makes me laugh because it hurts because this is Iowa Hawkeye football to a T. Suffer ball. We're playing field position. We're going to grind the clock out. We're going to run it, and it's just going to be ugly the whole time. We're going to make it ugly as possible. And that led to the Broncos last year, I think, finishing 3rd in defensive points per game. They were pretty good in that metric. A lot of their advanced metrics, not so good, but because of the complementary offense to the defense, they looked okay. Maybe this year you see some of the EPA per play and whatnot look better, kind of like people were, if you recall, Carl, people were like, oh, this Bengals defense isn't very good. I'm like, the advanced metrics say they're actually pretty good. It's just the Bengals are turning the ball over a lot, and they run more plays than anybody per game in the NFL. So they're going to look worse when they have to be on the field more. I think that's kind of what you could see of the Broncos this year, where they could step back some, but if they can get more sacks, turnovers, getting off the field, closing games out, even if they're giving up more points, yards, et cetera, they could be a better defense.
Well, and I also wonder, how did teams play the Broncos different this year compared to years past? Because I think a lot of times teams came into the Broncos game knowing if we don't turn the ball over, we're probably going to win because their offense can't score enough points. We're going to score at least a few. Mm-hmm. Their defense is good, but how much are they going to hold us down from at least scoring 20 points? We're going to bank on their offense not being able to score 20 points in this game. And more times than not, you're going to beat the Broncos with that formula. And so I wonder sometimes, like with the Chiefs, like the Broncos held them to some of their lowest scoring outputs of the last few years. But I wonder if they knew, hey, we got to put up 27, 35 points to beat the Broncos. Does that change a little bit of how they go about that game? Now, maybe that risk helps the Broncos, where then, like you said, they get the turnovers. But if teams are actually looking for some of those bigger plays instead of taking some of the safe stuff, it could add more points. And so I think it could be a little bit of hit or miss. I do like that the Broncos have built a lot of the players that they've brought in for the defense, especially Randy Gregory. Like, he is built to get after the quarterback. And so you're trying to play with the lead so he can pin his ears back and go get the quarterback. You're hoping for Draymond Jones. That can really help take him to the next level, play to his strengths. And you're hoping Bradley Chubb can get back to what he looked like more like his rookie year with getting that 10.5 sacks and getting after the quarterback. And so it's why I'm hoping they still bring in more pass rushers, because you're hoping you can keep adding that. Baron Browning maybe moving, at least on sub packages, moving down to the edge position, or at least getting after the quarterback. It's kind of that idea of you're hoping you could be playing with the lead so you can use those guys to their fullest advantage.
Yeah, and the more I thought about the Baron Browning talk, made me think of Anthony Barr coming out of UCLA. Is he off ball? Is he edge? They do a lot of simulated pressure with him. He's lined up over the A gap or the B gap or the C gap. And is he coming? Is he going? And the point of that is to create, while you only send 4, to create a one-on-one matchup, because the offensive line has to still account for all those guys on the line of scrimmage. So Mike Zimmer, one of the better ones at simulated pressures. We'll see if that becomes a trend with the Broncos this year under Evero, which sounds like they want to be more of a pressure-based defense. We'll see if personnel dictates that and how it all looks, because everything is just words until it's on the field. We can actually analyze it. Jason Cardoza coming in with the $4.99 super. Good to see you, Jason. Hey, Nick and Carl, did you guys see Wilson's throwing session to the wideouts he put on this socials? Gives me goosebumps just watching it. Yeah, it was great. I mean, there's that number 3 on the field. Man, he's got his own football logo on the field. That is, it's different when you got a dude like that coming in here. Oh man, it's really good to have there as the logo too. Yep. Boom. It's so awesome to have Russell Wilson here. I am really curious to see what his career going forward looks like. You know me, Carl, always I'm guarded. I'm like, oh, everybody's like, we're in a Super Bowl now. Like, let's just see if he'll play like a top 10, top 8 quarterback first this year before we're playing in the parade. But the Broncos now have a quarterback where they are in the conversation. Before it was, oh man, if we have a top 3 defense and everything around the quarterback is perfect and the quarterback takes steps that we haven't seen yet from them because the situation is so good, then it all comes together. Now we're sitting here. The offensive line doesn't have to be perfect. The pass rush right now, the depth in the pass rush scares me a bit. Who knows about the defensive backs? It's a tough division. We got a chance. And I truly believe that. I'm not just blowing smoke up anybody's rumps in here. Like, we have a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
And usually when I see videos like that, I'm like, oh, great. They caught the one throw that was perfect kind of thing. But with Russell Wilson, knowing that's what he does, that's his favorite throw right there. And knowing for Cortland Sutton, I had somebody ask me earlier, who's this better for, Jerry Judy or Cortland Sutton to bring in Russell Wilson? I said Cortland Sutton. Yeah, because he loves that deep ball. That's that year that he had over 1,000 yards. A lot of his big plays, him getting down the field, either making the 50-50 catch or just that perfect throw where he has great hands to go make the tough catch down the field. And so I really do. I think Sutton is the guy that benefits the most. KJ Hamler is another that I think is going to benefit because they want to get down the field, push it. And Tim Patrick even. I mean, he's got more wheels than people remember. Yeah. Straight line speed, Tim Patrick, pretty darn good.
Yeah.
You ask him to turn, he's going to have some issues with that. He's not great at that, but he's better than what he was even when he came into the league. And so you said it earlier, Jerry Judy might be the guy that actually struggles the most with this transition.
I just need to see what it looks like. When it was the Hackett offense with Rodgers, they run the dagger route till the cows come home. I mean, it's dagger, dagger, dagger over and over again. That sounds dark. The dagger route. And Judy would be great in that because a lot of the middle of the field stuff where you get separation from the slot, that makes sense. But historically speaking, Russell Wilson, this might be something about his height, does not work the middle of the field very well. And in order to not work the middle of the field as much as he avoids it, you have to be unbelievable outside the hash marks. And there's a reason that every single year, not to be a advanced stat nerd, but like Russell Wilson has been the CPOE leader over the last 5 years, almost every single year. His completion percentage over expected. It's because those outside passes that he hits, guys aren't hitting that at that rate, right? And he's not getting the stats padded by the over the middle field passes as much. So it will be interesting to see what it looks like. I think there's going to be a lot of speed outs. I think there's going to be a lot of RPOs, but the middle of the field is where Judy, I see him winning a lot. And in the more Shanahan-esque, McVay-esque wide zone offense, West Coast offense, there was a role there. But with Russell Wilson, I'm not sure if it's an exact clean fit, right? So again, we'll see. It's all theoretical until it's not. So I'm still really high on Jerry Judy and what he can do. Honestly, for my biggest thing with Jerry Judy is, buddy, in this offense, if you're running 11 personnel and teams are going to be living in dime against you or 2 high shells, we need you to be a dog as a blocker, because the difference between you blocking a slot or sealing off a slot with Jamal Williams there is the difference between, a tackle at 2-yard gain versus 15 yards or 20 yards when he gets to that next level. So that's my challenge for Judy, blocking, getting in there, staying healthy, but I want him to be a butt kicker in the blocking. Tim Patrick, too, his blocking wasn't as good last year, but it's been better historically.
All right, we got Flazify coming in here with the $4.99 super chat. Appreciate that. He says left tackle, Garrett Bowles, left guard, Moody. Ooh, there's a interesting one. Center, Glasgow. Right guard, Miners, right tackle, Anderson. That would be the ideal starting offensive line, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I would push back a little bit just because of the wide zone scheme. Moody is not a great mover. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's good at being the guy going straight forward and moving people. But when you're asking him to get lateral and move side to side, that was not always his strength. And so I just worry about his ability to get moving, get to the second level, those kind of things. Calvin Anderson, here's what I would tell Calvin Anderson. This is the biggest year. This is the biggest offseason of your career. This is your chance to cement yourself for the right tackle moving forward. And just tell him, you got to get this right. You got to go put in all the work possible. We're going to give you a fair chance to go win this job. And if he does, that's great. If he can play like he did left tackle when he was doing some spot duty, play that over at the right tackle spot, he could become a pretty darn good right tackle for you. But he hasn't shown that so far.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. One for me, Netane Moody. I think Netane Moody can be a fit in the outside zone scheme. And there's one player who comes to mind for me with this, and I've went through the outside zone schemes. Okay, who's really excelled as a not great athlete, but a body mover at the guard position in an outside zone centric scheme? Brandon Brooks, of Philadelphia Eagles, comes to mind. The big caveat with Brandon Brooks excelling at right guard, specifically for the Eagles in that outside zone heavy scheme, he was playing next to, this is not hyperbole, this is just the reality, the best single athlete at the center position in all of football in Jason Kelce, and the best single athlete in all of football at the right tackle position in Lane Johnson. When you have two guys that are that good at athletes around you, maybe your athleticism doesn't matter as much. Maybe you can compensate with that with a little bit more earth moving there. So I don't know about Moody fitting here. There's one there. There's one example for me that sticks out where that makes sense. Laken Tomlinson, another one that's not the best athlete that has done it as a body mover. So we'll see. I think I was too early to dismiss Netane Moody, but this is a big offseason for him. I think, unfortunately, with your starting list there, and it's just your opinion, the best five, we'll see. I think he's closer to not making the team than he is starting, but I think I would definitely ruled him out too much too soon.
Yeah. I mean, he has some highlight blocks last year. When he got some opportunities, he pancaked some guys. So you love to see that. You just got to see a more consistent player. And hopefully this is the year. I loved him coming out of the draft. If you remember right, I was a big Moody fan. I loved his ability to move people. I mean, his name is very fitting. Moody the Mover, and so if he can work that way, if he can still move people, go for it. And have that interior with Miners and Moody being helped to move people. I love that. But we'll just have to see how good of a fit he is. We got Phil McLaughlin coming in here with stars. Really appreciate that, Phil. And appreciate everyone tuning in here to talk some Bronco football with us. We have Travis coming back saying, good evening, Nick, Carl, and Broncos country. With Peyton building the team this coming season through trade and free agency, will he go for depth in the draft, except for maybe finding a kick/punt returner?
I mean, I think if there's a right tackle that they really like that falls in the draft, they will go up and make a move to get him. But I think that's also true for edge. The edge spot right now, you have Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb, who you have not seen play full seasons really in a long time. And historically, they don't play full seasons. The other thing also that makes sense, if an edge falls that they like, this is a good edge class. If they go up and get one, that is kind of setting yourself up where you have a little bit of leverage when it comes to Bradley Chubb next offseason. Let's say Bradley Chubb has a good offseason. You're not going in there, I don't have a first and second round pick, and I probably can't get an edge unless I pay for one, but I have to pay Russell Wilson. I guess we're just going to have to go with Jonathan Cooper or a veteran cast-off type of guy. Not an ideal situation. So I could see an edge falling as well where they get up and move him. I also think what do the Broncos have right now? I think they keep saying 9 draft picks this year, but then I've seen 8. Whatever it is, we know one thing. Peyton's going to move around. And I also think he's going to try to make some moves to accumulate 2023 capital, because right now you're dealing with a deficit in 2023. I think he's going to start to look to use what the capital he has now without having as many roster holes and get some depth with his draft picks this year, but also start to add more bullets, even if they're late bullets, add more bullets for 2023.
Right. And something to keep in mind with the contracts the Broncos have signed so far, all of them, other than the main guys that they signed, like Gregory, Jones, and whenever they signed Wilson, the rest of them have been 1 to 2 year deals. And what they're trying to do is, let's say the Broncos have a ton of success and those players have good seasons. Well, then you let them walk in free agency and you get comp picks for that. You start building that up. I can see that Peyton is trying to build up better opportunities for comp picks moving forward, especially for next year. If they can get some extra guys coming in, that's going to be huge for them.
Yeah, I mean, that would change how their offseason looks next season about bringing in free agents. You thought people were a little bit curmudgeon-y about the Broncos not bringing in free agents. They brought in a fair amount of free agents. You thought they were a little curmudgeon-y this year. It'd be probably even more so next year. But hopefully that's because the Broncos are re-signing their own guys. Draymond Jones due for a contract. You got, who knows what happens with Ronald Darby's contract. You got Bradley Chubb's contract. Russell Wilson might get a contract as well. So will be really interesting to see what happens there. No doubt about that. So another question here while Scott is perusing the chat, seeing if we got anything here. But so now the Broncos, I think we can all mostly agree, maybe outside of right tackle, that the starting 22 is pretty much set. So now we're talking depth, and we got Gary Leeds Palmer talking about depth. Gary Leeds Palmer, good to see you. Hey, Nick and Carl on Broncos country, let's ride. You need to get some more let's ride, and you probably need to start ending the podcast with that too. But Denver Broncos for life. Absolutely, Gary. We appreciate you. What are the positions that you think, while they're not the starting 22, what are the next areas of this roster that you think Broncos could use some depth here? Broncos could use some competition here to help round out the roster, because you said it earlier. If you're looking at 22 starting the year, odds are a third of those guys aren't going to make it through the year. So you're going to need some depth and quality depth at some positions.
So linebacker, safety are two big ones. Interior defensive line is another that there's not a whole lot of depth there. They just signed Quan Williams, which I like Williams, but you still like to get better than that if you can, and you like to build for the future. And a lot of times interior defensive line takes time. We don't know what Ajim's going to be this year for us. You hope he's taken that next step, but we don't know yet. And edge, obviously, you need more depth there. Really, the entire defense, like the starting 11, I like. Everybody behind them, not so much. They're pretty darn weak. And so that's why, again, I could feel pretty darn good about most of the positions they would take at 64 if they're picking at 64. Because even on the offense, too, I feel pretty good about the offensive line, the interior offensive line, even the tackles now, especially if you sign Shell.
Yeah.
Like I want to add more to it, but if they don't right off the bat, I'm going to be okay with it.
Yeah.
And then tight end is another one. You got two guys right now that you feel okay with, but I wouldn't mind them adding somebody, but I don't really want to add them in the second or third round. This is a deep tight end draft. You can find guys that can be quality players later on.
Yeah.
And then running back. I really the entire team, if you're looking at it.
I know. You really did.
I know. I just listed
off. I'm waiting.
I'll say wide receiver's good. But no, even running back, you got Williams, you got Boone, who I think he's a good backup. But you don't have anything else. You need more than that for running back.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you at all. Gosh, if the Broncos took Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker at 64, everybody, oh, Nick, how could you do this? Those are good players. Pick 64 is not the worst in the world. I would want to see what the rest of the board looks like. But, I also think Russell Wilson wants to be this quarterback that is throwing the ball 50, 60 times a game. And I don't know if that is conducive to his play style. I do think it probably needs to be a little bit more of a 55-45 type of offense where you're hunting the big plays and making teams have to pack the box against the run, and having 2+ running backs actually can help that as much as, I always say the running game doesn't matter. It matters to the extent of forcing the defense to think you're going to run the football. Chad Beach coming in here. Thank you so much. Evening, fellas. Thanks for all the Broncos info. Love this show. We love you, Chad. Thank you. That's so nice for you to say. Really, that really means a lot, because there's a lot of good Broncos content producers and analysts out there. And hearing that, we are appreciated or thought highly of it all is really humbling. So thank you so much. Can't wait for the season to start now. Going to be fun to watch this team. Let's ride. Denver Broncos for life. MHH. Thank you so much, Chad. That's really nice of you. Thanks for the support. Back to me. So the part of the depth positions for me that I think are much more pressing for the Broncos. Right now, I would have to say edge is number one for me. Now, I do not know what that means for Baron Browning. I'm under the assumption right now that Baron Browning is going to cross-train as an edge, but it's going to be very rare situationally, past situations where he is that edge. So I'm more comfortable at the off-ball linebacker position than you are. If there's somebody in the draft, maybe you bring him in. And if that's the best player at 64, cool. I don't even care. Fine. But I don't think it's as pressing as the edge spot. That's my number one. Safety number 3. I'm sorry. I need to see more from Jamar Johnson. I know he had the sick bug last year, but he doesn't play special team snaps. He has tackling issues, and he hasn't shown to be super versatile. All 3 things that if you're going to be my safety number 3, you have to freaking do. So safety number 3 from it. And the Rams the last 2 seasons combined, no team has played more dime defense in the NFL, period. End of story. That's all she wrote. So you should expect to see 3 safeties on the field pretty often. I just wished you had somebody there maybe a little bit more physical or versatile than what Jamar Johnson has shown to date. It's kind of like last year, Jamar Johnson, 5th round pick, hyping him up. We haven't seen it yet. This is rewind 1 year ago. This is the exact same conversation we were having with Justin Strnad. How did he look out there? So I think that's a position that you should be considering upgrading for sure. Speaking of the third safety, CC coming in here. Maybe sign Jaquiski Tart, who has some safety corner versatility. That's my guy. I would love Jaquiski Tartt. Just might as well bring all the 49ers guys they can't keep under contract. I think he's one of the best linebackers in football. Still pretty young. I know he dropped that for sure interception against Stafford in that game, but he's made more good plays than bad. I would love him coming in here.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that would be a great signing. And hey, that 49ers defense, they were good. So it's not just that you're bringing in guys that are, they're comfortable with from seeing them, either Rams defensive players, or you got some 49er coaches as well that have come over. These are actually decent players that made big impacts. So I'd be definitely good with that signing. We'll see what the Broncos continue to do. They're not done. That's the nice thing, is they still have room to make a few more plays here in free agency before the draft even. And I'm sure even after the draft, we saw last year, the Broncos made some moves. I think was Massey a signing after
Fleming and
Fleming.
Fleming. Yeah.
Yeah. Both of them were after the draft. So he's not done. I mean, Peyton, if you want to say anything about him, the guy is always trying to make moves, whether they're good or bad, whether you should be doing them or not. We'll debate that as the season goes on. But for the most part, he loves the wheel and deal. Mm-hmm. And I don't blame him. If I was a GM, I'd be like, dude, I got an itch to do something. I got to do something. But yeah, you're right. I guess we should say, when we're talking about needs, because every position could use depth.
Yeah,
that's the reality of the NFL. You're not going to have 53 guys that are starter quality. So we should probably just put them in tiers of, okay, which one do we think has the highest need compared to some of these others? And you're right. Edge, it really depends where Baron Browning falls. If you view him more as an edge guy instead of an off ball, then off ball becomes a need more than it already is. If you view him more that he's going to play off ball and then he's going to come down and play a little bit of edge here and there in some sub package situations, then you're right. Edge is absolute need. You do not want Malik Reed to be one snap away from being a starter.
Yeah. No, 100%. That one scares me. But I really like Jonathan Cooper too, but I like him. He's fine as an edge 3. He's great as an edge 4. And in the AFC West, people are like, you got to have tackles. You got to have pass rushers too. So I'm in the same boat there. And honestly, you're more likely to need your depth at the edge rushing spot, because those guys typically play rotate snaps. You're only seeing the backup offensive lineman, knock on wood, if there's injuries. So that's the big thing. You are going to see a bevy of cornerbacks, a bevy of pass rushers. So you need depth there at those positions. The last one here that I think is an interesting one Broncos could still pursue is the interior defensive line. Right now, you mentioned it earlier, McTelvin Najim. I think he's fine, and he's really good getting after the passer. But if the Broncos are going to play as much dime as they keep hinting at, or even the too high safety shells pre-snap, then likely that means that you need your interior defensive linemen to be pretty good against the run and to be able to hang against some double teams. And McTelvin Najim, when he gets one-on-ones, he's been a pretty good pass rusher, but he's not very good at anchoring. He's not very good against double teams or gap and a half, whatever you want to call it. So that's one where I could see them bringing in maybe a veteran interior defensive lineman that in base packages plays that 5 technique spot versus somebody like McTelvin Najim, maybe somebody like Akeem Hicks, maybe somebody like a Sheldon Richardson, maybe even somebody like a Calais Campbell, even though he's a little bit more of an inside-outside kind of guy. But still, I could see that being a position as well where they look to attack to bring in more veteran presence and to bring somebody who more proven than McTelvin Najim. Because right now I see McTelvin Najim, people are talking about him. Why didn't he play last year? It's kind of the same reason you didn't see Mike Boone play. Mike Boone would have played and he probably would have been fine. But guess what? Thank your lucky stars. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams didn't get really injured. I think if Draymond Jones got injured, you would have seen McTelvin Najim playing that more of the slender, more attacking style interior defensive lineman. But Draymond's a better pass rusher and he's better against the run. So you're not taking Draymond off the field for McTelvin Najim. So we didn't see him.
Right. And you're right. He struggled to anchor. Mm-hmm. And so teams would attack him every chance they got. He made some great plays. I mean, he made the highlight plays, kind of like Moody did last year. He made the highlight plays. You need a guy, if he's going to be out there for even 50% of the snaps, to be able to show consistency. So teams aren't sitting there saying, oh my gosh, Ajim's out here. What are we going to do to attack him? And so far he hasn't proven that he can be that guy quite yet. I hope he's working, and I loved him coming out of the draft. I mean, it was easy to see. He had a long ways to go. He was more raw talent than he was finished product, obviously. But I think there's still potential. I still would like to add to that group. All right, we got Chad coming back again saying, you think the players and this new coaching staff will work better than what we have seen the last few years? I can't wait to see them play and see how things play out. Here's what I'll say. Expect some growing pains with a new coaching staff. Like, I'm excited about this staff, but they have made some changes and added some things that a lot of other NFL teams are not doing. They did not go the traditional route. Let's just say that. I mean, they do have head coach, offense coordinator, defense coordinator, that kind of thing, but they added a few extra other positions. It looks more like a college staff than it does an NFL staff, if I had to say. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there could be huge benefits for it. But also, again, in-game situations. A lot of these guys have never had to do a lot of the in-game situations. How are they going to handle that? They're going to mess up. Look at Staley for the Chargers last year. You could say in that game against the Raiders, he made about 4 or 5 huge mistakes that cost his team being able to go to the playoffs. I still think he's a pretty good coach.
Yeah.
But there's just going to be some of those kind of moments. Thankfully, with Wilson, you can have some growing pains with your coaching staff and still win a lot of games.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, you hope so. That's the thing about the Broncos right now. I think what you said, Vegas has the Broncos at better odds than the Chargers for winning the Super Bowl right now. I do think that some of that might be maybe they're tied. But I think of that
they're really close. Yeah,
they're close. I think some of that might be Vegas knowing that Broncos tend to get heavy betting from fans out there. So shout out to the fans. You guys are great. But for me, again, this is just me being a scientist, wait and see. There are so many new variables for the Broncos right now. New coaching staff, new scheme, new quarterback. So much has changed that I just need to see what it looks like before I'm gung-ho about the Broncos being a Super Bowl contender this season. I think they have the talent to do it, but need to see how it all works together in motion for multiple games before I see it. But I'm liking what the roster is starting to look like coming together on paper. So excited about that. Excited for the draft too. I mean, pick 64, 75, 96, 115, 116. They won't keep all those picks. I can almost guarantee it. I don't speak in absolutes very often, but I can almost guarantee it. They won't stay at all those spots. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Travis Weber coming in here saying, was surprised hearing Wagner could still be a possibility. Thought he was Dallas bound. Yeah, I don't know if Dallas is going to bring him in or not. I know that Dan Quinn acts as his own agent, and apparently he said recently that Bobby Wagner coming to Dallas is not super likely. The longer that Wagner is on the market, the more interested I am. I'm not interested in paying him $10 million a year, but if he wants to come in for a short 1 or 2 year contract and solidify the defense, I got no issue with it. I know I'm not big on paying the linebacker position. You can go back and look at the investments over the last decade. Most of them have been pretty bad for the open market free agent linebackers. So we'll see. But the longer he's on the market, the more interested I am because I think the price is going down a little bit at a time.
I'm with you there. Wagner's a talented player. There's no getting around that. He would help this defense if he was here, but the price has to be right.
No.
How much does he add? Say you pay him $15 million a year compared to Jewel at $5 million a year. I don't think he's that much better of $10 million difference.
Yeah. And Michael saying, I'm sleeping on his resume. He's really great. He's a Hall of Fame player. I'm not paying somebody for what they've done. I'm paying them for what they want to do. That kind of reminds me of Kobe Bryant at the end of his career. He's playing max contracts. He's not a max contract player anymore. Like that kind of thing. It's like you need to be smart with your investments. And I think that paying and Wagner's play stepped back. He started to step back a little bit last season. I think it was Nate Tyson, the Athletic Pod, saying like you're paying. It's like the difference between paying a Mac and a PC. They're functionally the same, but you're paying for the Apple on the front as much as you're paying for the product. So that's I don't know if there's making any Mac fans or PC fans happy or angry back there. I don't care about any of that stuff, and who cares? But
how dare you speak of Kobe Bryant that way?
Yeah, Kobe's great, but
yeah.
the end, what he was getting paid was not great for the team, the way they could structure it. But that's my opinion on Bobby Wagner. He'd be fine, but I'm not looking to pay big money for a player who is regressing at probably the least valuable position on the defensive side of the ball. That's why these young guys get it for like a 6th round pick, right? The older guys who are kind of starting to fall back.
Yeah. And that's always the problem is a lot of times guys are getting paid for what they've done compared to what they're going to do. Yeah. You have always talked about like with running backs, the odds of them living up to that second contract, pretty slim.
Yep. You
love what Javonte Williams can bring for the rookie contract. You love what he could maybe bring for another team on his second contract.
Yep.
And, I love Javonte Williams. I love what he brought last year. I think he brings more than most running backs in the NFL. Like he's not as dependent on a great offensive line being in front of him to produce. He can make plays on his own. But at the same time, again, running backs wear down quickly. And also, again, they are still dependent on some other things going right around them. And so we'll see what he gets paid that second time around.
Yeah.
I just kind of hope it's not with the Broncos. Like I said, I kind of like adding to that position through the draft. I'm not trying to slander Javonte Williams. Please don't think I'm trying to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. Amy coming in here. Shout out to our Broncos Mile High Huddle ladies. Let's ride Broncos. Thank you so much, Amy. Hey, we're going to have to ride out of here pretty soon, but just kind of wrapping it up again. Big news of the day. The Broncos fill out their last gaping hole on the defense, signing Quan Williams from the 49ers, 31 years old, has almost exclusively played the slot in his career. Looking at the snaps for his career right now, 3,425 snap slots compared to 127 on the boundary and 294 in the box. Yep. This is your slot cornerback, folks. So Broncos get that one. He's a great tackler. He has had some injuries, but not to the extent of Chris Harris Jr. of late, Tavon Young, Bryce Callahan. So probably the healthiest of the remaining options. Good tackler, a lot of ball production as well, which I really appreciate. Broncos, this has been a good defense, but what separated them from being great was their ability to take away the football. They just haven't been able to do that in the Vic Fangio era. Some of that is because of the offensive ineptitude and teams saying, we're not going to play aggressive offense because your offense sucks. We only have to score 20 points and we'll win. Yep, good bet. Good job, guys. But that's not the case anymore. So hopefully somebody with a little bit more ball skills like Quan Williams and this defense can really start to take off. But you still got to keep adding to pass rush and even more defensive backs as well, in my opinion. So really excited. This is what I've been screaming about for a bit. Broncos lost three of their top six defensive back earners. I also saw that Troy Rank said the Broncos are in talks with Kareem Jackson. Doesn't mean anything will come. Maybe Kareem Jackson wants to wait a little bit closer to the start of the season so it doesn't have to go through all the OTA stuff as well, which would be hat tip to the vet for playing the game and knowing what you got to do. But yeah, Carl, any thoughts before we start to get on out of here? Any comments or last thoughts?
Well, it has been a crazy week for the AFC West of seeing the Raiders make their trade. And yeah, a couple weeks here. And it's going to be a fun season. I really do hope the NFL figures out, maybe we should waive this cap on how many primetime games a team can have, because all 6 AFC West games that all 4 of the teams play should be primetime games. Just with these quarterbacks, the star power that's going to be in each of these games. And it makes it so much fun to know that the Broncos are part of that.
Yeah.
To know that they're actually going to be a team everybody's talking about. I think as Bart Scott put out his top 5 teams. He didn't have the Chiefs.
8.
Do what?
I think he had like 8. I think he had the playoffs. I think it was 8 teams.
Did he? Okay. Well, in the top 5, he did not have the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And I would have the Chiefs in my top 5. It's just that crazy when you're looking at all these teams and what they've done to improve. I don't think I've ever seen a time where the AFC was so much better than the NFC. Just either conference being this much better. I wasn't watching football much in the 80s, back when, the NFC was dominating. There we go. Yeah. See, Bart Scott has the Chiefs missing the playoffs. Oh man, living in Chiefs territory. Do you know how fun that would be to walk around this town talking how the Chiefs missed the playoffs? It would be such a glorious day. I'd be the guy skipping through town when everybody else's heads are hanging low.
Yeah. And Scott, can you pull that up one more time? If it's already gone, that's okay. There's just another team there that I think was interesting that they were missing as well. Maybe Scott's not going to pull it up. Nope. It's all good. Number 1 seed and overall last year, Tennessee Titans also missing the playoffs there. So man, this is a absolutely insane time in the AFC West. It's possible that only 2 teams make it. I mean, heck, who knows what's going to happen with Cleveland, with Deshaun Watson? Is he going to be suspended for the year? Is he going to not be? I mean, who knows? Yeah, here we go. Thank you so much, Scott, the producer. God bless you. It's always good to have Scott here. It makes the chat and everything work so much better. But yeah, Bengals, Broncos, Bills, Colts, Browns, Chargers, Ravens, Chiefs missing, Titans missing, Steelers missing, Patriots missing. This is an insane time. I mean, it would have to really suck to be one of the teams that is no chance, right? Like the Miami Dolphins made a massive move today, and they're hoping Mike McDaniel's a guy and Tua Tagovailoa. Nobody gives a hoot about the Miami Dolphins. Like, okay, good luck fighting for a 7 seed, maybe. And then you have the Jets, the Jags, the Texans. It's probably a rough time to be one of those bad teams in the AFC right now because there doesn't seem to be much end in sight unless you can find that quarterback.
Oh man, and just think, a couple of those teams used high draft picks on quarterbacks, thinking they maybe found their guy that could really get them at least to that average play. They could surround them with a great team. Yeah. You cannot have average quarterback play even on a rookie contract and expect to make the playoffs. So mostly all the animal teams. Yeah, there you go. You got to be an animal.
Yeah, and to your point on drafting the quarterback, those teams, and missing some of them, the ones that I mentioned, you do have that chance always. But then you also have Joe Burrow and the Bengals and Justin Herbert and the Chargers, where they're essentially a cheat code right now because they're paying their quarterback $7 million against the cap, where everybody else is paying them $25 to $50 million. So there's the risk of the rookie quarterback. But if you hit on that rookie quarterback, you got a 3-year window, 2 to 3 year window where let's go. So it'll be really interesting to see. I think the Chiefs and Chargers this year are dangerous. So we'll see. We're over an hour, guys. We love you. Quan Williams is here. Offseason still got a lot to go. I think that was probably the last big move from the Broncos this offseason, but you never know. Maybe George Payton has something still in his pocket. So Jeremy coming in late to the party as we're saying goodbye. Appreciate you, Jeremy. Goodbye. Make sure you guys are following Carl and I on Twitter. Carl is at Carl Dumler, and I'm Carl Dumler MHH, and I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you're following Scott, producer and co-host for the morning shows, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys like the show, make sure you're following us also at Huddle Up Pod and at Mile High Huddle. If you're joining us on Facebook today, or if you're not joining us on Facebook, but listening after the fact, coming across this, make sure that you're joining our communities on Facebook at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle, as well as facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. YouTube folks, please subscribe to the channel at Mile High Huddle. Like the show, like this show today, like the channel in general, and also share it to your social medias, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok. Make a TikTok of us saying stupid things. I don't know. Like I say plenty. There's enough shows out there that there's no doubt in my mind I have hours of stupid content from yours truly. So do that. I don't know. Have fun. But make sure you guys are subscribing, liking, and sharing on YouTube. If you're listening after the fact, you have iTunes in general, head to Apple iTunes and podcast, find the Huddle Up Show, leave your 5-star rating and review. And we appreciate you guys. We're going to get on out of here. Yeah, Jay's really going to hold you to that. Maybe a week 1 monkey tail. Yeah. It's coming. What do you think your kids would say about the monkey tail?
Oh, they'd love it.
Okay.
It's the wife that I'd worry about. Or really, no, my mom. That would be the one. If she knew that I was on a show with a monkey tail beard, oh my gosh. She might come shave me in my sleep.
Now we want it even more, Carl. You shouldn't have told us that. Well, guys, we appreciate you. We'll see you on Scott's channel tomorrow to talk some Falcons and NFL draft in general tomorrow morning. So make sure you're tuning in there on Scott's YouTube channel if he wants to put it there in the chat. It's always a lot of fun to hang out with Scott, talk some ball. We're gonna get going. Make sure you guys choose kindness, choose compassion. Go Broncos. Let's ride. I like it.